How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Sports Talk YouTube channel. Brendan and Sterling coming at you for week number one of the NFL playoffs. It is wild card weekend, and boy, oh boy, we just had some excellent college football this weekend, finally deciding who's going to be in the national championship game. And we have a literally wild weekend full of wild card games, and we can't be more excited about it. Sterling, obviously, I know your team plays, but they are playing second on Saturday, so we will talk about them second. So the first game tomorrow, as we were recording this on a Friday evening, that is the Chargers taking on the Texans. This is going to be in Houston, but honestly, I look at this game as the Chargers. They are really happy that they got the Texans because I know for a while there it was really looking like the Steelers could be going up against the Texans, and that kind of almost felt like their first win in a playoffs series or in a playoff game in 8 years. But if you're the Chargers, you are one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now. You don't have to play the Bengals, which I think everyone is sitting back going like, thank God. Like, thank you, Denver, for beating the KC Chiefs in the final week of the season, so no one has to go up against the Bengals. But right now, I feel like coming in, it is the Chargers, and they are minus 3 point favorites.
Yeah, they are coming in hot, and Houston really is limping into the playoffs here. The Texans and the Steelers both limping in the AFC. Um, I think the Houston Texans were the most desirable first round matchup for any team, just because there's just so many injuries, so many missing parts. CJ Stroud just he doesn't have as much there this year, and I don't put that on him at all. His O line has been subpar at best. Losing Collins for part of the year and then losing Diggs entirely, losing Tank Dell entirely, Joe Mixon missed part of the year. This team, it doesn't feel like their year, whereas the Chargers really came on with Harbaugh and Justin Herbert just looks like he's rejuvenated, and you forget how young he is because we watched him struggle with this Chargers team for so long, being that he was a young draft pick. And now he's really coming into his own and he is looking really good. And they got themselves what appears to be a stud in Lad McConkey. If he's in that game, this offense is firing on all cylinders. It's when he's missing that this team has stumbled throughout the season.
Yeah, I look at this team and go, I think we all expected the Chargers to be a better team than what we saw last year. It was going to be Harbaugh was going to come in and it was going to be okay. It's going to be clear improvement. Maybe you were going to be the seventh wild card spot if it was kind of a weaker AFC, but ultimately it was going to be one of those things of like it's just not your year to make the playoffs. And then I think about that halfway mark of the season, we all kind of just like took a step back and looked at the Chargers and were like, damn, like this team is actually for real. Like Harbaugh is coming in and just doing an unbelievable job with Justin Herbert. And you know what? Justin Herbert's numbers are down, but from in the terms of what we expect from Justin Herbert, we expect 4,500 yards, 30 passing touchdowns, but his interceptions are down. And Harbaugh's bringing in the exact offense that he needs. He's going, listen, dude, you're a superhero. You don't need to be Superman every single play of the game. You're going to have a very consistent running game, and we are going to play really, really consistent football all around. And like what you're saying, Lad McConkey has just completely come on. And yeah, talking about the Texans, man, they have just like it has just been a tough year. Injuries have hurt them massively, and their O line problem. The fact that CJ Stroud was the second most sacked quarterback in the NFL this year, it just goes to show. And he's still young. He's still a young quarterback. I think we all kind of expected him to come in this year and basically be the MVP. When we have to kind of remember that he's 24 years old. He's not that old, guys. Like he is still a young guy figuring stuff out in this league. I always say it takes 3 years before you really understand what the NFL is as a player.
Yeah, and I really equate last year to them catching lightning in a bottle too. That was an
Yes.
anomaly season. That was a very unique, special season that he had. We've seen similar things out of Jaden Daniels this year, and I've been, tempering the hopes of a lot of Commanders fans that I've talked to and been like, look, you guys made the playoffs. That's great. Don't expect to go much further. And be ready next year for that regression because that sophomore slump is a very real thing with these quarterbacks these days when they start so young. That second year is rarely as good as their first one, especially if they have a star year in that first rookie season of theirs. It tends to fall off in that second season. And that's what we've seen from Stroud. And his numbers aren't that much different other than the fact that he's getting sacked a lot,
Yeah.
and that goes more to his O line than anything.
And there
And
are
it's
a
just,
bit more interceptions this year than there were last year as well.
there are, but again, that's from him running for his life, and so that makes it tough for sure. And he just doesn't have the weapons right now going into the playoffs. It's Joe Mixon, it's Dalton Schultz, it's Nico Collins. That's the bulk of it. I know they've got a couple of other guys on there that are younger. I'm just forgetting their names right now,
Yeah.
but they just don't have enough up against Harbaugh. And really, there's been a lot of jokes going around about how this is the worst possible matchup CJ Stroud could have because the last time he faced Harbaugh was when Harbaugh was with Michigan and he just got dummied by him. And I fully expect to see the same thing sort of happen. I think the Chargers are going to win this game, and I don't think the Texans are going to be able to keep it very close.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I just think Harbaugh, he's coming in like he's a 15-year pro at head coach in the NFL. And yeah, now granted he doesn't have that many years, but he's that experience that he had with the 49ers is just showing off so impactful now. And I just think the Chargers they're going to walk away with this game. I think that -3 maybe a little bit generous for the Chargers, so I choose the Chargers to win and cover that spread. Next up on the list is the Steelers making their way to Baltimore to take on the Ravens, where the Baltimore Ravens are -9.5 points.
Yeah, it's the tiebreaker. Each of these teams won a game this season. But the Steelers, they really stumbled hard coming into the playoffs, which a lot of us expected. We had a feeling when they hit that 10-game stretch they were gonna fall flat, lose all three, and then it was tough sledding against that Bengals team. They could have won that game, but this offensive play calling, it's starting to be a little more reminiscent of that Matt Canada style. It's not the same plays, but it's the same sequence. It's the same play, first and second down, and then we have to scramble on third down to try and pick up a long third down conversion, and it's just not working. And if they do the same thing this weekend, that 9.5 point spread makes a lot of sense. Um, on the other side of the ball, though, this defense is strong. They held the Bengals, which is one of the most explosive offenses, to 19 points. You know, and we've seen it before. They often have Lamar Jackson's number. They're one of the better run stopping defenses. They were able to slow down Derrick Henry a little bit last time in that first game, not so much in the second one. It's honestly, this game is going to come down purely to time of possession. The Steelers' offense is going to have to find ways to convert first downs and stay on the field and keep the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hands. That is the only way this Steelers team has a chance to win. If they can win that time of possession battle, they could win this game.
Yeah, I think you know exactly what I'm gonna say. I think the defense they're gonna be able to do the best that they can. I think
Mhm.
we've seen exactly what this offense is doing against real talent. Again, these last 4 weeks, we knew coming into the season this was going to be the test, and we all thought the Bengals would be a lot better than what they were in this game. Like that last game of the season, we figured could have been for the division title, and
Mhm.
it's just one of those things of where this offense just keeps fumbling itself away and they keep having too many errors, whether it's Russell Wilson throwing an ill-advised interception, whether it's a fumble situation, whether it's just a bad play call, or whether it's just George Pickens just playing absolutely horrible and throwing temper tantrums on the actual field because he's not having a good game. It's been really really rough. I've said for a while I didn't think Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson were doing all that great. I was like, wow, they're doing okay. And Russell Wilson, he's a serviceable quarterback and he's doing serviceable things. But the second that they start going up against real defenses, against real elite teams, or not even necessarily elite teams, just good teams, it's been exactly what we've seen. And the last time that we saw these two teams face off, it was in Baltimore, 34 to
Mhm.
17. And yeah, Lamar Jackson didn't have his insane numbers throwing. He had 207 yards, 3 TDs, and an interception, but he was only sacked once. So it's not like Baltimore or Pittsburgh was getting after Lamar a crazy amount in this particular game. For the most part, Lamar was pretty clean. Derrick Henry, again, the 24 rushes, 162 yards. If the Steelers want any hope in hell of winning this game, you can't allow Derrick Henry to have over 70 yards. Because if Derrick Henry can have over 70 yards, it's chances are he's having more than just 70 yards, and he's having closer to 125 plus yards. It's You can't allow Derrick Henry to absolutely go off. And here's the thing, Zay Flowers isn't going to be playing in this game. He absolutely torched the Steelers last time, so that is at least some level of hope for the Steelers, is going back and saying, you know what, we don't have to worry as much about Zay Flowers. They're going to be a little bit more one dimensional. But here's the thing, that one dimension that they have with it's, we are just going to essentially hand the ball off to Derrick Henry and use Lamar Jackson for his elite athleticism. That's enough to win you 99 out of 100 games.
Yeah, I mean, it not having Zay Flowers there is definitely a big help for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That does limit what Lamar Jackson can do. Really, if they can shut down Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, the tight end duo, and then you've got a Landon Roberts, who is one of the highest percentage run stoppers in the league this season. You just get him on Derrick Henry. I don't know, man. Lamar Jackson struggles against this Steelers team. He managed to pull one out last time, but the Ravens overall have struggled lately against Pittsburgh, and the Ravens have a tough time in the playoffs, just like Pittsburgh does. And
They've had much more
with all these
success
other
lately, though.
games, I feel it's a little easier to pick because this is the only true division game
Mhm.
in the wild card here. And so it is going to be likely tough, physical, gritty game. I bet it's going to be cold in Baltimore. I haven't even checked the weather
30
forecast
degrees.
yet. And I don't know, man. I this was a hard one to pick, because it's playoffs. I'm obviously not going to pick against my team. I don't necessarily think they'll win, but there are definitely some avenues for them that they could pull out this victory.
Yeah, for me, ultimately, what this is coming down to is the Steelers' offense, and I've been saying it the last 2 years. I've been saying it maybe even longer than that. I
Mhm.
don't have trust enough in the Steelers' offense to be able to get this game. And we've talked about the Steelers' defense being able to take over and win games so much. I think the Steelers' defense is tired. They haven't looked particularly special these last 4 weeks. They did a good job against the Bengals, but other than that, it was, they struggled against the Chiefs defense, they struggled against the Ravens defense, or they struggled against the Ravens offense, and they struggled against the Eagles offense. And so for me, there's just no way that I can trust the Steelers to compete in this game, because if they find themselves down by 14 points early in this game,
Mhm.
I think even if they find themselves down by 10 at some point in this game, I think it'll be too much for the Steelers team to overcome, just because I can't trust that offense with Russell Wilson and Arthur Smith
Yep.
calling the plays. And so for that, I'm choosing the Ravens to win. I don't think the Ravens will cover that spread. I think that 9.5, because this is essentially just a division game. So I think the Steelers will cover that.
Yeah, and that's just it. Like if they get down by 10 or 14, then it will effectively be over at that point. Um, Honestly, if the bounces can go Pittsburgh's way, this game will go the other way because even that 34-17, there were 3 fumbles that the ball just bounced right back to a Ravens player, and if they bounce the other direction, that game finishes very differently. And that's what this is going to come down to. I think the Steelers defense is going to get after Lamar. They're going to find a way to make him make mistakes early. And if the Steelers can get up, the Steelers are going to win this. I am going to pick the Steelers to win because I can't pick against my team in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I don't expect anyone to expect you to not pick the Steelers in this one.
No.
So moving forward to our first Sunday game, this is the Denver Broncos going to Buffalo to take on the Bills, where the Bills are minus 9-point favorites. And honestly, I think that might be a little bit insulting to the Bills.
Yeah, it might be a little bit insulting to the Bills, but I'm going to drop this right away. This is my upset game. I think that Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos are going to go into Buffalo and they're going to shock this Bills team because the Bills defense is not very good either. And it's going to be a shootout. I don't know. I think we see the old Josh Allen emerge late in the game because he's desperate, he's panicked, and he's going to make a mistake. And Pat Surtain's going to make him pay. And I think the Broncos are going to upset the Bills here.
I I I have to completely disagree with you on that one. I can understand where you're coming from. I think this year we can talk about Josh Allen playing like a completely different quarterback. He's played like a completely different version of himself where he's
He
not
has.
turnover prone. And I look at the way that he's finished this year. Now, granted, he didn't play in week 18. He took one snap and then was out because he wanted to keep his Iron Man streak alive, which I respect
Mhm.
that. Like, at least trying to go out there and do that. But this Broncos team, man, I look at what they do, and yeah, sure, Bo Nix has really sexy looking numbers, but I don't trust Bo Nix. I don't, and
No,
I think Sean Payton has shown these last couple weeks that even he is not invincible when it comes to decision making and play calling. Because there's been times late in games where the Broncos have struggled, and again, like the Steelers, unless they faced that Chiefs team, and like if the Chiefs were actually playing most of their guys, the Broncos would have walked into the playoffs if they made the playoffs with 3 losses. But the teams that they ultimately faced later in this year, Chargers, they got beat. Bengals, they got beat. Now they were
Mhm.
facing all the backups for the Chiefs, so they were able to put up big numbers. I just don't think this Broncos team is good enough. And now, like I agree, I don't think the Bills defense is amazing, but they're not a bad defense by any stretch of the
No,
imagination.
no.
Like they are a top 15, maybe verging closer to that top 10 defense. And Josh Allen, man, like I've been said to be a bit of a hater of his for years, but
Mhm.
this year, man, he has played at a completely different level, and I have to choose the Bills to win this game, and I think they cover that spread pretty easily. I think the Broncos are just going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I get that. Like, don't get me wrong. The Bills are the better team in every way, shape, and form. This was just one of those games I looked at and I just got that gut feeling that we haven't seen it this year. Josh Allen's been better, but I just feel like this is going to be that one game where, like we talked about all last season, he's going to play down to what the other team is. I just have that feeling. That's all it is. That's the only thing I'm basing this on. Not that the Broncos are more talented. Not that the Bills aren't.
Yeah, I
It
know what
just
you mean. It's just that gut
that's all
feeling
this
from
was.
last
This was
year.
one of those ones where I just looked at it and I really could see the Broncos going in there and upsetting this Bills team, and all of a sudden, the Bills just collapse. They lose on a wide right field goal to try and win the game at the end, as the Bills often do.
Yeah, I feel like if they're gonna do that though, it's not gonna be the wild card, or it's gonna be like the Super Bowl or like the AFC Championship game type situation.
I thought that too. Like I said, it just this was just a
It's
game
a gut
that
feeling. Yeah, I
it
get it.
is.
I
That's
do.
all that was. Yeah.
Next up is a game that I will be keeping very, very close tabs on. That is the Eagles taking on the Packers, where the Eagles are minus 5-point favorites. Now, Jalen Hurts is active and he is expected to play this game.
I mean, he damn well better at this point. Like, you don't have Jalen Hurts in there, you're done. You're cooked. Like this was the season opener
Mm-hmm.
for the NFL, not just for each of these teams, but for the entire NFL. This opened the season down in Brazil. These two teams, Jordan Love got hurt. It was a bit of a sloppy game. I think it's going to be a much cleaner game here. The Packers have been playing very well. Uh, they're coming off of an embarrassing loss to
Yeah,
the
they are.
Bears last week, though, which is, I think, just going to make them angry. And so they're going to be playing a lot tougher football against arguably one of the best teams in football right now, both on both sides of the ball. This Eagles defense has been great. And the offense, when Jalen Hurts is in there, is very good. Yes, the last few weeks has not been great, but there's been
That's
no
been
Jalen
Kenny
Hurts.
Pickett.
Exactly. What do you expect out of Kenny Pickett? He's going to throw the ball in the dirt. And
He's going
so,
to throw himself into the dirt.
right, I don't, I sort of throw those last 2 weeks out because
Yep.
you can't base what this Eagles team is on their backup, unless that's who's playing this game, and he's not. It's Jalen Hurts. This is going to be a tight game, though. Um, it's going to come down to running. Who's going to be able to control the trenches more? Is it going to be that Billy O-line and Saquon Barkley, or is it going to be the Green Bay Packers and Josh Jacobs? And honestly, Saquon Barkley all season has been just that fringe MVP candidate, and only fringe because he's a running back and not a quarterback. Like
By all
honestly,
accounts, he
if
should be.
right, if they would take the fact that it's a quarterback award out of it, Saquon Barkley would be vying for this award, like hands down.
Yep.
And so I think the Eagles, they're just they've got too many weapons in too many areas, whereas the Packers really only have Jaden Reed, Josh Jacobs. Kraft has been doing well at tight end, but they don't have the star power of an AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goddard. I don't know
They
if
don't
Dallas
have the
Goddard's back yet.
guys that they can fall back on
Exactly.
go-to times. They have average guys who can do average things and who can
Well,
make good decisions and good plays from time to time, but they don't have that star power to go, we need this big play. We need you to go make this third down catch. Boom, third down catch made, big first down.
yeah, and I mean to be fair to them, they don't have that star power, but they're still very young. This
Yep.
Packers team, at the skill positions are very young outside of Josh Jacobs, and he's not old
I
in
think
his
he's
own
what,
right. So
26, maybe 27 at the
exactly,
oldest.
but all these other guys are younger, and so we could see these guys grow into AJ Brown, Devontae Smith caliber players at some point. It's just I don't think it's the Packers' time right now. I think right now this Eagles team is likely already looking ahead to the AFC Championship, if I'm being real, and trying to figure out who they're going to be facing there because I think the Eagles are going to walk their way all the way to that NFC Championship.
Yeah. First off, fuck the Packers. So there's zero chance that I'm ever picking them in the playoffs. Like I not gonna happen. Never gonna
Mhm.
happen. And Jordan Love is banged up. He did take a big shot last week against the Bears, and so he's not going into this game fully healthy. And Christian Watson, he's out for the year, and he's going to be out for a good
Mhm.
portion of next year as well with that ACL tear. This Packers team doesn't have a great defense. They just simply don't. Their offense, again, it's pretty much been Josh Jacobs really running the ball and making everyone else better. Here's the thing. Philly, they've got everyone that is going to be capable of stopping that. Jalen Carter, he's been playing at an all pro level at the moment at the D tackle spot. He's both good on the run and he's both good at sacking the quarterback. I don't think the Packers have that elite of an offensive line either. I think this is just going to be one of those scenarios where the Eagles just say, you guys thought you were scared in Brazil? Well, guess what? This is Philly, baby. You should be even more scared. And I think the Packers are going to go into this game. They're going to go in scared, and they're going to get the shit kicked out of them. I think this is going to be a very easy win for the Eagles.
Yeah, yeah, I saw a lot of funny memes this week actually, where it was Packers fans and Packers playing players going, "I know you guys said Brazil was dangerous, but can we play this game there instead of in Philly
Yeah,
because I don't want to go to Philadelphia."
we're going to get shot.
Right? Exactly. But no, I agree that there's just too many factors in favor of the Eagles here for the Packers to really even stand a chance at this point. Like They were part of an excellent division this year, made it into the playoffs the way they did, but they're going up against the juggernaut here, and the Eagles are going to win this game, and the Eagles are going to cover that spread.
Commanders versus Buccaneers in Tampa. What is likely going to be probably the best playoff game this weekend, where we have two explosive offenses with two kind of subpar defenses. The total for this game is 50.5. So they're expecting this to be a high scoring game. And honestly, I look at that total and go, you could have probably bumped that up to like 55.5. And I think people would have still been like, you putting that a little bit low, aren't you? And the Bucks are minus 3 point favorites. And
Mhm.
I look at this and I go, for me, the difference between these two teams is the experience at quarterback. Baker Mayfield, I think, is the better quarterback out of the two, and I think he is the more experienced quarterback out of the two, and he has played unbelievable this year. I think this year alone should single handedly put any rest or concerns with Baker Mayfield to rest. Like because I know for years you were someone that wasn't confident in Baker Mayfield. I know he had that Cleveland Browns stank on top of him, and he was a division rival. But I was always someone that was very confident with Baker. I was always a big Baker fan, and I still am. And I think this year alone has put all of that stuff to rest. And
Ye- Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me always was just the character. He had a lot of character issues early in his career, and that was what was bothering me about him.
see,
He
I don't
always
think
had
he
that
did have
chip
character
on his
issues.
shoulder, and he didn't earn it. Now he's earned it. And so now when he's got that swagger out there, I look at him and go, well, yeah, you're playing like you should have that chip and you should have that swagger. When you were walking around with that swagger before, and getting blown out every third week because you couldn't lead your team to victory, like that's where I had issues with him. This year, yeah, has solidified that he is a great quarterback.
Yeah, and in this game, rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs always struggle. It's very rare that we see them be that great. Now, the Commanders' offense has been, without a doubt, fun to watch this year. Jane
Mhm.
Daniels has been good, and he's gotten progressively better week in, week out. I think the Bucks are just going to be a little bit too much for them in this game, especially being at home and with how bad that Commanders defense is. I don't trust the Commanders to be able to compete. They're definitely going to score points, and without a doubt, they're going to score a couple of fast points and keep this competitive for a little bit. But I think ultimately, when the game gets into like the middle part of the third quarter and then going into the fourth, the Buccaneers are just going to find a way to control this one and just eke out this clock and really just ultimately walk away with this victory.
Yeah, and I mean the Commanders the last few weeks, we've seen some struggles with Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin making connections. He's been overthrowing his receivers a lot, and that's starting to become a problem. I really think the only way the Commanders have a shot at winning this game is if Marshawn Lattimore can bait Mike Evans into a fist fight and both of them get ejected. That is the only way they have a shot to hang with this Bucks team. I think this game, we could see more points scored than pick any other three games combined in this wild card weekend, and they could outscore any of those three games, I think, because this could very well be a 52-48 final, because it is just absolutely insane how explosive these two offenses are. But again, like you said, the experience. Baker Mayfield's got the experience. Mike Evans has that experience. They've got a little bit of youth in Cade Otton and Bucky Irving in the tight end running back positions. But this defense is very good
It's
in
rough.
Tampa Bay as well compared to what Washington has.
Yeah.
And the fact that this game is in Tampa, it's it's going to be too much for this Commanders team to overcome at this point. They're still a draft, maybe two away from truly being a contender in that NFC East division. And so I think this was a great first step for the Commanders, but they are going to bow out in this wild card game as the Buccaneers will beat them, and I think the Bucks will cover that spread.
Our final game of the week ultimately had to be moved out of LA due to some of the devastating wildfires out there, and they are moving this game to Arizona. The Vikings and Rams. should be a fun one, but Minnesota is minus 3-point favorites.
Yeah, I mean, the Lions last week exposed the Vikings. Sam Darnold can get those poopy pants.
You can start
You
to
know,
see ghosts
when
again.
yeah, he's seeing ghosts again. Exactly. You know, he was seeing Aiden Hutchinson out there, and Hutch has been out for a lot of this season.
Hmm.
You know, and so that is a real concern for the Vikings because if he plays like that against this Rams defense, who admittedly they're not the same defense as they were when Aaron Donald was there, but they are still a formidable youthful defense that I think could get after Sam Darnold and make him see some of those ghosts. And so this was a tough one for me to pick. When it was still in LA before these fires began, I was wholly on board for the Rams being able to pull this win out. With it going to Arizona, they could not have picked a worse neutral site for the Rams because that is not a neutral site. That is hostile territory. You've basically made it an away game because you're taking it to a division rivals stadium. You know, it's a little disappointing they couldn't find somewhere else to play it that would be a little bit more on the neutral side. So,
Could have been played in Vegas.
right, right, go to Vegas and play it there. That would have been a better option in my opinion, but it's I don't know, man. This is going to be an emotional game for the Rams. You know, a lot of them live in LA. And so they're losing homes, you know, they're losing friends. The friends are losing homes. Like they're going to be emotionally charged. If they can channel that, they could very well surprise this Vikings team out of the gate.
Yeah, and I don't really think it mattered where this game was being played, whether it was in LA, whether it was in Arizona, whether it was in Vegas. I think like let's be honest here, the Rams don't really sell out their crowds. It LA, unfortunately for the two professional football teams, they're always going to be kind of that away team, especially to some very well-traveled teams. I'm not going to say that the Vikings are one of the most well-traveled teams in the NFL. They're not like the Steelers, they're not like the Bears, they're not like a handful of other fan bases that just go to everything and can easily take it over from time to time. But last week for me, I looked at what the Lions were capable of doing against this Sam Darnold offense. And it's like we need to remember that the Lions maybe have one starter that started the year still playing on defense, and they have some positions where down to like their third, fourth guy.
Hmm.
And I think the biggest thing that we're seeing with Sam Darnold this year is those pressure games. Because we haven't seen really much of those until last week. Because a lot of them were just like, oh, we're just going out there. It doesn't really matter. And then last week, it was for first place. Like, it was for the NFC's first spot. And they just weren't capable of getting it done. Now, again, it was against the Lions. Like, you're not going to be too upset about losing to the Lions, but they were so banged up on defense. They have pieces out. You should have been able to beat them, but they
You
weren't.
should have been able to at least hang close. That is my biggest concern. They got beat up and blown out.
Yeah, 31-9. Like that's not a way you do it. And for me, just that game of Sam Darnold basically seeing the ghost of Aiden Hutchinson, I I I can't pick Minnesota to win this. This is not me being a Bears fan choosing the division rival to lose like I did with the Packers. Fuck the Packers. I have no respect for their fans, no respect for the Packers, no respect for anything about that organization. At least with the Vikings, I can go like, oh, they're doing this, this, and this, and I like this, this, and that. I think they're gonna struggle. I think this is where the Cinderella season ultimately has its final conclusion, and this is where it hits midnight. We know what the Rams are. We know this is a hard-nosed football team with one of the very best coaches in the entire NFL with Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. Like this is just gonna be another game for him, man. Like he's gonna go out there. He's gonna say to his team, "Let's just go out there and do what we need to do," and that is gonna be playing some confident football. And I think this game is going to be close. I still think the Vikings will keep this game entertaining, but I think the Rams will ultimately end up walking away with a victory here, and that means I'm also picking them on the spread.
Yeah, this feels like it could be the swan song year for Matt Stafford as well. I think he's going to be hyping these guys up, going like, "Look, let me retire Ray Lewis style. Let's go out, let's march our way to the Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl, and let me
The
hang it
Ray
up
Lewis
at
style, the
that
Peyton
point."
Manning style, let me walk out into the sunset. And
Exactly.
in LA's
And
case, into the smoke.
yeah, and so it's going to be a great battle, between the head coaches, Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell, two great head coaches right now. Kevin's coming up. He is going to have a few good years coming up here in the future. I
Yep.
think it's
He's going to
this
be
just
coach of the
isn't
year
his
this
year.
year. I think like
You know,
that's
we
guaranteed.
talked about the Vikings. That this has been a magical year for them. They were not supposed to win this many games. They were not expected
They
to
were supposed to be
be
fourth in
in
the
the running
division.
for the NFC North title. And it does. It has to come crashing down at some point. And I agree. I think it's this weekend against this Rams team and Sean McVay. I think the Rams will win this game and cover that spread.
Well, that is it for our game picks. Make sure to stick around for some of the other videos that we're going to be posting this week. But for Sterling, I'm Brendan saying thank you all very much for watching. We'll see you next time.